Welcome. So in this video, we will discuss about the National Commission for Minorities. We will discuss the latest context. We will also discuss the various legal provision in India as well as constitutional provision. So this topic is very important for your polity perspective of UPSC. So this is one of the important topic, one of the commission that you need to study for your polity exam in your UPSC. So let's begin. So recently it has been highlighted that 7-member National Commission for Minorities has only one member left after the retirement of its vice chairperson, while the other 5 posts have been vacant since May 2020. So since May 2020, the 5 post has remained vacant, and very recently the vice chairperson has also retired, which means now there is only one member, which is mostly along the line that this commission will become mostly dysfunctional. Like one person cannot do the work of 7%, right? So this there is a kind of contemplation or speculation that this commission will become dysfunctional because of the present vacancy. So what the Ministry of Minority Affairs has clarified that the process is underway, that it's not like these vacancies are not being tried to fill, but it got delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we all know that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is a lockdown, there is still restriction on the movement, and because of it, the vacancies were not able to get filled. But Ministry of Minority Affairs has clarified that the process is underway. So it's not like this commission is going to become dysfunctional. Now, the little bit of background. In 2004, the Standing Committee on Social Justice and Empowerment, headed by Sumitra Mahajan, so who later became the Speaker of our Lok Sabha. So, under the guidance of Sumitra Mahajan, the Committee on Social Justice and Empowerment made a specific recommendation to strengthen the National Commission for Minorities, highlighting its insufficient investigative power. So that is one of the contention point in terms of how the National Commission on Minorities work, that even in case any violation happen, they don't have proper investigative rights. And hence in 2004 itself, recommendations were made to kind of make certain kind of changes in the power and functional of the National Commission for Minorities. However, these recommendations were never implemented by then government. So these recommendations were not implemented. The reports tabled by the National Commission for Minorities are hardly taken up or debated irrespective of the government in power. Now this is something which could be considered that National Commission for Minorities has never become the one of the focus point of any government. So we had the UPA, the NDA, none of the both of the spectrum, none of them keep it as a focal point. Section 13 of the National Commission for Minorities Act of 1992, so this is the act through which this particular commission was set up, mandates that the annual report together within the memorandum of action taken on the recommendation contained therein, as well as the reasons for non-acceptance of the recommendation, if any, be tabled before the Parliament annually. So this is the mandate of the act, a statutory act through which this particular commission is formed, mandate that an annual report is presented in front of the Parliament and its recommendation are taken care of, and if any recommendation is not considered, the Parliament or the executive have to provide a reasoning for it. But you will be surprised to know that these reports have not been tabled in Parliament since 2010, which means for almost 10 years now, a kind of a section or kind of a provision which was mentioned in the act itself has not been commenced. So this is the little bit of background how the National Commission of Minorities were functioning as of today. Now let's try to understand what exactly is the National Commission for Minorities. So in 1978, setting up of Minorities Commission was envisioned in the Ministry of Home Affairs resolution. So that is how the genesis of the National Commission for Minority could be envisioned, that way back in 1978 it was a part of the Ministry of Home Affairs resolution. Then in 1984, the commission was detached from the Ministry of Home Affairs and placed under the newly created Ministry of Welfare, which excluding linguistic minorities from the commission jurisdiction in 1988. So this is what the how the progress happened. Then in 1978 it was Ministry of Home Affairs. Then in 1984 it was become a part of the Ministry of Welfare, which was recently set up there. Then in 1992, with the enactment of National Commission for Minorities Act, the Minorities Commission became a statutory body and was renamed as National Commission for Minorities. Just remember, this is a statutory body which has been formed under the Act of 1992 by the same name. In 1993, the first statutory national commission was set up, and the five religious community vis-a-vis your Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, Zoroastrian or the Parsis were notified as minority communities. So what we consider minorities in India? They include Muslims, Christian, Sikhs, Buddhists and Zoroastrian. And in 2014, Jains were also notified as the minority community. So as of now, how many minority community we have? We have six. We have Muslims, Sikhs, Parsis or Zoroastrian, Jains and Buddhist as well as Christian. So these are the six community which is notified as minorities in India. So these are the little bit of genesis on how the National Commission for Minorities come into picture. Now let's try to understand its composition. We just discussed that it is a 7-member commission which consists of a chairperson and a vice chairperson and 5 members, so total 7 members. And all of them shall be amongst the minority community. So all the member, chairperson, vice chairperson and even 5 members, all the 7 member has to be from the 6 community we just discussed about, which has been declared as minorities in India. Total of 7% to be nominated by the central government should be from the amongst the person of eminence, ability and integrity. So this is the qualification criteria which is mentioned. So the people who will be a part of NCM would be the person who are of eminence, who have the ability and integrity. And the Ministry of Minority Affairs recommends the name to the Prime Minister office. So the name is recommended by the Ministry of Minority Affairs, and that is why in the recent context they came up and clarified that the vacancy will be filled in the upcoming days and the process is underway because they are the one who recommend the name to the PMO. What is a tenure? Now tenure for each member is that they hold an office for 3 years from the date of assumption of office. So they have the tenure of 3 years. All 7 members have the tenure of 3 years. So this is the basic composition of NCM. Now let's just quickly understand what are their functions is. So first major function is to evaluation of the progress of development of minorities under union and state. So what is the progress or what is the conditions of minority in various states and overall India is one of the function that they have to perform under the NCM. Then monitoring of the working of the safeguards for minorities provided in the constitution and in laws enacted by parliament and the state legislature. So they also monitor that all the provisions of constitution as well as the legal provision which has been in place, how far they have been implemented in letter and spirit. So that is also a function of NCM. It also ensured that the Prime Minister's 15-point program is implemented and programs from minority communities are actually functioning. So 15-point program was also envisioned in which the basic tenets on which the minority committee should move forward for their progress and development and their accumulation in the mainstream. So that is also to be followed and that is one of the mandate. Making recommendation for the effective implementation of safeguards for the protection of the interest of minorities by central or state government. So making recommendation is also their task, their function, that they will go ahead and make recommendation that what could be done by the union or state government to safeguard the interest of the minorities. Looking into specific complaints regarding deprivation of rights and safeguard of minorities and taking up such matter with the appropriate authorities. So this is the point of contention which the 2004 report talk about, that they have the function to look into the specific complaints, but they don't have any investigative power to do anything about it. Aggrieved person belonging to minority committee may approach the concerned state minorities commission for redressal of their grievances. getting studies to be undertaken into problem arising out of any discrimination against minorities, recommending measures for their removal. So conducting case studies in order to identify what kind of discrimination is happening in the society and what kind of measure could be taken to tackle that. So that is also one of the function of NCM. It investigates the matter of communal conflict and rights. For example, in 2011 Bharatpur communal rights as well as the 2012 Bodo Muslim clashes in Assam were investigated by the commission and their findings were submitted to the government. So this is something again a function of the NCM, that it can go ahead and look into the matter and present a comprehensive report about what went wrong and what could be done to not have such kind of problem in a society. So that is also a function of NCM. So these are the broad functions that the National Commission for Minorities has to perform. Now let's also move forward and try to understand what are the legal provisions for the minorities which has been enacted by the Indian Parliament. So NCM Act defines a minority as a community notified as such by the central government. So this is the definition in the National Commission for Minorities Act, that a community could be considered as a minority if it is notified by the central government. So if like in 2014, Jain was recognized as the minority community. So that's the idea. The government of India has declared 6 religions, namely Muslim, Christian, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Parsis and Jain as religious minorities in India. The National Commission for Minority Education Act of 2004 was also enacted. What does it entail? So it gives the minority status to the educational institution on the basis of 6 religious community notified by the government. For an example, if a education institute has been set up by any of the 6 religious minorities we just discussed, so those institutions will get a minority status, and there are some kind of relaxation in terms of reservation and in terms of various practices which need to be followed by the educational institution. So this is the some legal provisions which are in place to protect the rights of minorities, but our constitution also have provision for their protection. But the major point for you to remember over here, that the term minority itself has not been defined in the Indian constitution. Just remember this point, that the term itself is not defined in the constitution, though it do recognize the religious and linguistic minorities. So it mention about religious and linguistic minorities in various provision, but it does not give any definition from minority or what could be considered as a minority. So what are the various provisions under which this is protected? We have the right Article 15 and Article 16, which is provide Article 15 prohibition on discrimination of any kind. So prohibition of discrimination, Article 15, and Article 16, which talk about the equal opportunities in job. So the equal opportunity and prohibition of discrimination is again one of the tenet on which the Indian constitution relies, and which means indirectly providing power to the minorities, that they also have the right for equal opportunity and as well they cannot be discriminated. So these are certain provision. Then we have Articles 25(1), 26 and 28. So people's freedom of conscience and right to freely profess, practice and propagate religion. So this is protected under Article 25(1). Then under Article 26, right of every religious denomination or any section to establish and maintain institution for religious and charitable purposes, manage its own religious affair and own and acquire property and administer it. So if you look at from the idea of religious minorities in India, their rights are protected under the Article 26, that they could administer any institution, they could have any property under their name, so that is also protected. Then we also have Article 28, which says people's freedom as to attendance at religious instruction or religious worship in educational institution wholly maintained or recognized or aided by the state. So people have the freedom in terms of what kind of religion instruction they want to follow in institution which are aided by the state. So this is again something which helps the minority to protect their right. Then specifically we have Article 29 of Indian Constitution, which provides that any section of the citizen residing in any part of India having a distinct language, script of culture of its own, shall have the right to conserve the same. So it provides the right for conservation of language, script and culture to any section of the citizens. So this is later interpreted by the Supreme Court that any section of citizens means the majority also, that not only the minority but even the majority, like any community could go ahead and their right is protected under the constitution to preserve their language, script or culture. So this has gone beyond only minorities, and majority has also been included now after the Supreme Court interpretation. Then we have Article 30, which says that all minorities shall have the right to establish and administer educational institution of their choice. So this is something specifically only for the minorities, that they have the right to set up their own educational institution, because so the idea of them being minorities means the sheer number of them present in a country is less, so their culture need to be preserved more prominently because there are less people who follow that. So they have the right to have their educational institution administered, and that right is protected under the fundamental right of our constitution under Article 30. Then we also have the Article 350B, which was added by the 7th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1956. It inserted this article which provide for a special officer for linguistic minorities appointed by the President of India. So what is the purpose of linguistic minorities officer? That this special officer for linguistic minorities will see that the languages are preserved for the minorities. So there is no harm or there is no pressure on the language that the minorities speak. So these are the constitutional safeguard or constitutional provision which are specifically related to minorities. So these are the basic thing you need to know. This topic is important for your polity perspective. Go back to your Lakshmikant and try to revise what National Commission for Minorities is all about. And along with that, when you are reading it, go and broaden your horizon and read about the National Commission for Scheduled Caste, Scheduled Tribe, and very recently formed constitutional body of National Commission for Backward Caste. So I hope you have understood all these things. If you have any doubt, feel free to drop a comment. Thank you.